Hello guys, I wanted to talk to you tonight about, I wanted to expand on the subject of social media censoring the president and more so just, well, the banning of him on Facebook and Twitter because of what happened in DC, which of course is a tragedy. It's a shame that anybody had to die. Nobody had to, and it was misguided at best. And so what happened was terrible. But the thing is that what came next was worse, because we live in a society now where it's no longer theoretical, the idea of censoring the president. Or silencing him outright. You know, if you're a social media company and you don't like what he has to say, or you fear you fear the social consequences of the violence or dangers behind of what can happen if you're the president and you incite violence, which again, it's unclear that he literally incited violence, although Stop the Steal doesn't mean a whole lot of, it doesn't literally mean go shoot people or hurt people. It stops short of the real goal, Stop the Steal, that whole conversation. So but it's just that the thing is that everybody's been going about this. Everybody's been approaching this from the perspective of what the president's rights are, and what him as an individual and his rights are, and nobody, as far as I can tell, is talking about this. Is really hitting the nail on the head here. By nobody's really discussing what the social, what the rights of the people are. Because everybody's like, oh well, here are the rights of the company. The social media company has the right to suspend anybody who doesn't abide by community standards. And the president has the right as an individual to speak his mind and to say what he likes. And even that, you can say, has its limits. When you look at it from that perspective, when you look at it from the perspective of the companies, the social media companies' rights, or if you look at it from the perspective of what is the president's rights himself, because the truth of the matter is that the only real rights that matter are the rights of the public, and the rights of the public is, I think, what about the right of the individual to hear to be able to hear what their leader says. There should be no platform, no form of communication should ever be so big that if you get big enough that the president of the United States is using you as a direct means of communication to the people, you're already about as big as it gets. And when you and when you get that big, at a certain point, you are at a certain point when you get that big and you've got that kind of momentum behind you, you just have to go with the flow and keep moving. If you're a social media company and the president uses you as a way of communicating with the public, you're along for the ride. At that point, you become, Facebook and Twitter don't like this, but you become the mouthpiece of the president, and that's what you do, because the truth is that in reality, you're allowed to criticize if you're a news anchor, it makes sense to criticize what the president says. If you're a journalist, it makes sense to criticize what the president says. But social media platform is different. There's a big difference between a journalist and an actual platform in which journalists can speak from. a journalist has the duty, as does a publisher, to make sure that facts are shown, that truth is being told, and then, that you're backing things up, you're citing your sources. That's the job of a journalist or a publisher, not the job of a social media company. And so what I'm saying is that if you're Twitter and you're Facebook and you don't like the president and you don't like what he has to say, tough shit. That's all I can say about it is tough shit. I mean, you are now your platform is a platform for anybody, but when the president steps on your platform, he's not just anybody, and people don't really discuss it from this perspective, because they don't really treat the president like the special individual that he is. The president, unlike the other how many millions or even a billion users on Facebook, the president was elected by 60-some million people the first time, and another 75 million people the second time in 2020. What about the rights of those 75 million people to hear what their leader has to say, and to hear it unfettered and without context and without fact checking? I mean, it's so gross that the idea that you have to have a fact checker for everything the president says, or everything that, or for everything that, for a debate, so to speak. The idea that these social media companies are becoming they're becoming the publisher and the journalist themselves. It's getting to the point where they need to start being held accountable, because if they're going to act like a publisher or a journalist, they need to be held to a publisher or journalist standards, which means, yes, you can be sued. Yes, you can be taken to court over what you say if you say the wrong things or you spread lies. But when you are a platform and not a publisher, and when you are a platform and not a journalist, your job is to be an open mouthpiece. You're a town square, and if the president wants to set up shop in your town square and speak, he has the right to do so. But more importantly, the people have the right to listen. The people have the right to hear what he has to say, and not with some condescending statement about truth, about science, about the coronavirus, about fair and free elections. No captions, no context. If the president wants to say, if the president wants to tell us all to go jump off a bridge, with no context, if he just says, go jump off a bridge, he should be allowed to say that. And if he wants to incite violence, this isn't I don't know if this is a popular opinion, but the president is allowed to say things like that. The president can incite violence if he wants. And if he wants to, there are ways to deal with a president there are ways to deal with a bad president. It's called impeachment. Trump is already being impeached for the second time. He's got 2 days left in office, and impeachment has, and he's already been impeached from the House again, I believe. I know that they tried to push it through. The man's been impeached twice by the House. The man has, and then there's the election itself. The president is going to be gone in 2 days. The president has been punished by the people. The president is only allowed to be, when it comes to communication, when it comes to your ability to speak to your people, when you have 75 million people who voted for you and another 80 million people who didn't, it's not even the president's. We're getting lost in the idea that it's the president. We're taking our eye off the ball, thinking that it's the president who whose rights we're worried about, or it's the company's rights we're worried about. We have a right to the people have a right to hear what their president has to say in any way he wants to say it. That's his right. If Facebook and Twitter want to operate as the companies they are, they can censor just about anybody else except a public official, especially the president. And again, it doesn't matter what he says, because if he says the wrong thing, he will be punished, whether by the voter on election day or by Congress through impeachment. There are ways to deal with a president that have nothing to do with a billionaire's decision on whether he thinks what the president says is safe. So I believe that the people's rights is what I'm concerned about when it comes to this. And the people have the right to hear what their president has to say. 65 million people voted for him, or 60-some million people voted for him in 2016. Those votes matter, and if your platform is big enough if your platform is too big to handle, you can't handle the public pressure of being so big and so prominent that the president uses your platform to speak to his constituents. If you can't handle the heat, then get out of the kitchen. And that's the situation with these big tech companies. They can't handle the pressure they can't handle the public pressure behind the wheel of these huge social media companies where they can't, apparently they can't handle it, because their way of handling it is disastrous, and it's going to come back to catch them, because the public and world leaders are taking this serious, and actions are being taken around in many different countries to try to prevent this. But most importantly, in our country, we need to try to prevent this going forward. We need to do whatever we can, and I suggest that people just try to avoid using these platforms whenever possible. If these tech companies become less prominent, if they become less effective as a form of communication, as in if people stop using them, then they will lose their power. I mean, if enough people stop using Facebook's influence over Americans, if enough Americans stop using Facebook, then Facebook's influence over Americans will dwindle. It's the same with any other country. It's just a matter of how bad do you need these companies? Do you need to send a tweet, or do you need, how bad do you need to send a tweet? I never have. Every conversation I have about Twitter is on the sidelines. I just do my research and let it be. And I'm fine with that. I don't know what I'm missing, because I haven't, I haven't really used Twitter, but I haven't used Facebook in over a year now myself, and I'm all the better for it. I don't, other than wishing I could catch up with a couple of friends from high school, I don't really use it all that much, and I haven't had much use for it. So I have a suspicion a lot of you are in the same camp where you could give or take on social media half the time already before everything that's been going on. So really ask yourselves if you need it. All right, guys, we'll be in touch.